Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. With me, Professor Radit from Department of Islamic Economics, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Airlangga, Surabaya, Indonesia. With me now is Professor Dato Dr. Azmi Omar. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
How are you, Professor?
Alhamdulillah.
Professor Azmi is currently the president of the INCEIF, one of the best school in the Islamic finance in Malaysia, and now we talk about innovation of Waqf. You know that Waqf is very important, and for the last maybe 5 or 10 years, the development of the Waqf in many parts of the world is very fast. And then I remember the book by Islamic Development Bank in 2014 talks about the Islamic social finance, in which zakat is part of it. So we want to talk about not only Waqf, but we want to move forward about the Waqf innovations. So how do you see, Prof? Maybe we talk first about the current Waqf performance before we talk about the innovations. Especially we talk in the country of Malaysia or maybe other part of the world. The current stage of the Waqf, how do you see it?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I mean, before I answer the question, what I want to do is I want to go back a bit into history.
Yeah.
Because if you look at historically, Waqf, Zakat are important instruments used in the Muslim world.
Yeah.
I mean, Quran talks about sadaqah. And of course, the interpretation is both Zakat and Waqf.
Yeah.
And it flourished particularly during the Uthmaniyah period and period before that. However, when Muslim countries were colonized, I think the knowledge and implementation of Waqf was relegated into something not that important.
Right. Yeah.
And I think the last few years we see there's a lot of interest by even governments, Muslim government wanting to implement Waqf in their respective countries.
Yeah.
For example, when I was in IDB, IRTI, we developed the Waqf regulations. And guidelines. So now it's being implemented in a number of countries in West Africa.
Right.
So now the interest by government that yes, banking, Islamic banking, takaful, capital market are very important, are very important. We now need to develop Waqf, zakat. Okay, so but the question is that do we have the capacity, the knowledge, the talent to develop Waqf? Because before we even talk about innovation,
betul.
You have to go back to the basic first.
Yeah.
Okay, people do not understand Waqf.
So the current situation is that how many people perceive zakat is like what?
Okay, if you look at even in the context of zakat, I remember way back in Malaysia in the late 80s, we had a series of discussion and debate whether individuals like you and me, salaried individuals, should we pay zakat on our income?
Yeah.
But then in Malaysia we use Yusuf Qadawi's analogy to say that just like farmers have to pay and the others have to pay zakat on their produce, similarly individuals have to pay professions, and quote unquote their produce are basically their salaries, so they have to pay zakat.
Betul.
So immediately zakat become important. But then in all countries you have tax, so then how do you reconcile tax and zakat together? So at least in Malaysia the issue has been resolved, so people are paying zakat on salary. What I like about the Malaysian model is that we have another one which is called wakalah. Wakalah, which means that after you pay your zakat to the state religious authority, and they will give back to you a certain percentage, say 25%, 30%, depending on how much you give as zakat.
Okay.
So then you receive back, let's say, if you pay, let's say, 100,000 Malaysian ringgit, and let's say you get back 30%, which means that you get 30,000 Malaysian ringgit. So then, under wakalah, you are considered as a wakil of the religious authority to distribute directly to the poor people.
But how can we able to know whether the people who are that will receive zakat recipients is actually the asnaf of zakat?
they have a report that you have to prepare. So there is a standard template, Excel template. You fill in with details, and they will monitor this.
But we need to get approval from the
not approval,
our decision,
and they will tell you the categories of asnaf.
I see.
And then who are the beneficiaries, and then you give. And if you look at the Quranic verse, talks about the first person that you should have is the one closest to you.
Yeah, that's very good.
So your relative and so on. So a lot of people are doing this to help people. For example, poor relatives who wants to study, for example, or poor relative who requires financial assistance. So to me, that is a good model. Yeah. Now, we then go to Waqf.
Waqf, yes.
See, Indonesia is much more advanced than Malaysia in the context of Waqf. Although I would say that the interesting model that is implemented in Malaysia is the corporate Waqf.
Corporate Waqf, yes.
I think to me that's a good model, although things can be improved further.
Yeah.
So if you look at Waqf per se, historically has always been mosques, cemeteries, schools.
Betul.
But then as we expand the definition, we see that we now accept two important things. I see. One is the example of what we call the cash waqf. Because prior to that, cash waqf is not accepted, particularly in our part of the world.
Yeah, betul.
Okay, cash waqf was implemented and until today implemented in Turkey.
Okay.
In Turkey, so the idea of cash waqf is being accepted. That's important development. Okay. The second part is the acceptance of temporary
Waqf. Yes.
That's also not practiced in our part of the
world. But Malaysia accept, right?
Yes, accept.
Okay.
So because of these two things, I see the Sharia scholars are willing to look at beyond the traditional Shafi'i school of thought, going to other schools of thought and expanding it. And to me, in the modern economy, we have to consider cash waqf. That's very important. If we do not consider cash waqf, it will be difficult for waqf
to develop, to flourish.
Yes. So that's one. And the other one is when we accept cash waqf, then we also need to understand that there are individuals who are willing to give cash waqf for a temporary period.
Betul.
So that becomes what we call temporary waqf.
Temporary waqf.
So let's say they buy, like what in Indonesia, they buy a 3-year sukuk.
Yeah, betul.
So you buy a 3-year sukuk, and I still want to donate as part of my waqf, but I may want the money back.
Yeah, betul.
Okay, so I give for 3 years. At the end of 3 years,
the maturity you get back the principal. Yeah.
So the return will be used for waqf. So that's something that is unique, that is accepted. Yeah. So to me, these are the two key features that help to develop the waqf further.
Yeah. But if you look at when I read some of the papers, research in the journal and other things, waqf can be connected with the various kind of instrument. We know in Islamic we have an Islamic bank, we have a takaful, we have the Islamic capital market, and waqf can be connected to all these things. So let's say waqf with the takaful, waqf with the Islamic bank, waqf with the Islamic capital. So how do you see it?
Okay, to me this one thing which I consider waqf can be a far superior instrument is that because this is not only open to Muslims as beneficiaries, it's also for non-Muslims.
And also for
non-Muslims
donors,
to create
right?
waqf.
Donors.
So it's much broader than, for example, the other instruments. So to me, this is one area that we can really show that Islam is rahmatul alamin. Rahmatul all. So one of the ways is through waqf. Okay. And as you rightly said, waqf can be done through banking, capital market, and so on. But what is important in this particular case is that we need to be innovative. So the question comes in. We need to be innovative. For example, waqf can be used with banking, for example, to provide microfinance. And this helps to address financial inclusion, to address poverty.
Because the rate can be flexible, right?
Yes. So waqf can be used for that. And you can even use waqf for qadhu hasan purposes. For example, you give a combination of funding. So say for example to Muslim small business or micro enterprise.
Yeah.
So the fund can come from Waqf, providing that financing purely on Qadhasan basis, for example. And of course the customer, the borrower, can pay beyond that through hibah.
Right.
So that model. So because the objective of Waqf is to protect
the principle.
The principle.
Yeah.
Okay. So to me, Waqf is a very powerful instrument.
Yeah.
So in Malaysia, example of that innovative thing is that in Malaysia, the banks together with the central bank, they have introduced what we call blended finance.
Blended finance.
Blended finance. The program is called Etiqa.
Etiqa. So how is it?
It's a blend. So what it does is it uses a combination of zakat fund and Waqf fund plus commercial finance fund from the Islamic bank. So that's what we call blended finance. So for capacity building, businessman needs to understand how to run business, how to get the business digitalized. Okay. For example, so this is done through zakat fund.
Provided that these people are asnaf zakat, right? Okay.
So these are they are given the capacity building through zakat. The other one is if they are not asnaf, then the government will come in from the other source of funding.
All right.
Okay, the other source of funding. So there is the zakat component.
So how does the Waqf play a role in that context?
This is what I'm going to.
Okay.
So we have that zakat component first.
Right.
And then we have also the cash Waqf component.
Cash Waqf.
Cash Waqf component, where the customers are given financing at a lower rate. A lower rate because this is the Waqf component, for example. Or it can be a market rate. It depends.
It depends on the risk, right?
Yeah. At the end of the day, when we talk about managing Waqf must be managed professionally. It cannot be charity.
Betul.
In that sense, it must be managed professionally. So but again, Waqf fund is also very limited. So that's why you need to have the commercial fund as well. So it's a blended together, yes. Especially for the medium size, not for the small. Medium sized companies.
So let me just repeat. If you want to help the SMEs, let's say, if you want to uplift their capacity and assume that they are considered as the asnaf zakat.
Yes.
So for the capacity building, you use zakat, right?
Yes.
And the Waqf itself, in the form of what? In helping these kind of people?
It's the microfinance.
The financing?
The financing.
I see.
The financing will come from the cash Waqf.
Or maybe the equipment, Prof, yeah?
Equipment, it can be a combination.
Yeah, betul.
It can be a combination. And then on top of that, as they progress their business in terms of size, volume and so on, then they can get commercial finance. Okay, so it's that kind of combination.
But it should be in the stages, because sometimes commercial finance, the rate is very high. It may not be affordable for them, right?
But just imagine, for example, you can even also use Waqf to guarantee the commercial finance.
Oh, okay.
That's also another one. So it depends on how innovation.
So to guarantee means that if there is a problem, then the Waqf, you mean not the principal, right?
No, the principal.
The
return of the Waqf will be used for the guarantee of the business.
Okay. But in Malaysia, Prof, I talk about Waqf in some of the Waqf experts in Malaysia. And they say that the cash Waqf in context of Malaysia, they will not use it as a financing. Is that correct, Prof?
Yeah, at the moment, no. At the moment. Because you see, Malaysia has certain restrictions in terms of regulation. So there are issues.
Okay.
That's why I said earlier on, Indonesia is much more advanced in terms of Waqf.
Yeah.
Malaysia is much more restrictive because Waqf, at the moment when you mention Waqf, then it falls under the state religious authority.
Betul.
And you need to get a status to manage that, and it's called mutawali in Malaysia.
Mutawali, license,
license. So you are basically managing, but in your board, there will be a rep from
Nazir,
Majlis Agama. From Majlis Agama. So there are pros and cons. I mean, we always cite, I tell people that we always cite that Oxford,
endowment fund
uses Waqf from the beginning.
Betul.
College. And then we always talk about Harvard, a good example of endowment fund, and we say that Waqf should be there. I think to do that, you need to understand what are the challenges that we face today and address that.
Yeah.
See, in those institutions, it is managed
By a professional.
and there is no government involved at all. Government regulates. So to me, I think if you want to really get Waqf to really prosper, then it should be like banking, where the government just regulate and the players will operate based on their capabilities. Government should not be in every board of Waqf.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So to me that is
It is about the governance, Prof.
The governance part. So it's important. I mean, we look at the case of yayasan or foundation in the US, many other countries. Government regulates. But it's all private entities that will manage to the best of their ability. So you need to develop that similar scheme.
Maybe the intention, you mentioned that the representative from the Majlis Agama will have to be in one of the board within the Nazir. Maybe the intention is to make sure that the regulation will take place by this Mutawali. What do you think?
To me, from a governance perspective, to me, it's not the right way to do it. We cannot be an operator as well as a regulator at the same time. We should separate the role.
Betul.
Okay, that's very important. And then, of course, reporting, impact report, and so on will be part and parcel of the regulations. But coming back to the idea of what we call innovation in Waqf, I think one of the things that I see in Malaysia, which is also good example, is the corporate Waqf.
Corporate Waqf,
Corporate Waqf. Turkey did this way back in the late 80s. The Koch Foundation, so they created the corporate Waqf. All the shares, by this family, donated as Waqf. So the companies are owned by the Waqf entity. So
it can be 100% or can be partial.
Okay, so the shares. So that in the case of Turkey, the shares are transferred to a Waqf.
Okay.
So the Waqf owns the company.
Okay, so
it can be 100% owned or it can be partially owned.
So that means the Waqf institution will be the shareholders of that company, but the share itself is a Waqf, right?
Yes.
So any dividend that's coming in, that is obtained, will cannot be directed to the previous shareholders, right? It goes through the Waqf institution for social purposes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and the good thing in Turkey is that they accept that this is the third sector, not government sector. So which means that the trustees of this Waqf then use this money to support all those initiatives for the poor people. They decide on what are the initiatives and the programs for the poor. So no involvement of the government. So Turkey is unlike, historically has been very open in the sense that allowing a lot of family Waqf.
Family Waqf in Turkey.
In Turkey, and in the form of, one goes further from family Waqf into corporate Waqf, from that family into the corporate Waqf. In Malaysia, it is corporate Waqf, but it is not family Waqf because the law does not allow family Waqf in a sense.
In Malaysia?
Yes, so meaning that all Waqf is under the government.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because of the religious
but
rules.
If you mentioned that the family Waqf is not allowed in Malaysia, can
in a sense like this, you create the Waqf, but you have to transfer to the government.
Yeah, but can the Waqf mention the utilization is for the ahli, for the member of the family? Can, right?
To a certain extent only. You don't have the full authority. Even if in Singapore, you see that Singapore have this waris.
Right. Waqf real estate Singapore,
real estate, the waris. And then they also allow family Waqf, but because of history, before the law was created, they were family Waqf. So they acknowledge that. Okay. So if you look historically, there were family Waqf in Indonesia, Malaysia, pre-independent. I'm talking about pre-independence.
Betul.
But then the one that stops the family Waqf were the British and the Dutch.
Oh, they are the causes of the stop of the
stop. Not so much religious, because religion Islam allow family Waqf.
Not so much what?
Not because of religion.
Oh, okay.
Islam allows because we know that we have family Waqf.
Yeah.
But what happened is that if you look some of the literature, historical literature, they stopped allowing family wakaf because the government back then, the colonizers, the British, the Dutch, they had interest to take those lands for plantations.
Oh, okay.
Because they know that they cannot touch land belong to the mosque cemetery, but land owned by individuals, if that land is under wakaf, it's quite difficult for them to take. So what they do is they abolish family wakaf, then they can take the land to create plantations and so on. That happens in India, Indonesia, Malaysia.
Although initially it's already wakaf status.
Yeah, because
the land.
They
They
will
changed
use,
they changed the regulation.
yes, they don't allow creation of family wakaf.
Yeah.
Whereas we should come back to say that yes, we should create family wakaf again.
So coming back to a corporate wakaf, Prof, in the context of Malaysia, Prof, I read, I think one of the good example in the context of Malaysia is in the Johor Bahru, in the Jacob and One Corp, Prof. Just correct me if I'm wrong, because I may read the information about these things is that Jacob will buy shares, let's say, if I'm not mistaken, just say a name like KFC, McDonald's. So they buy shares of those company and then make it wakaf and then give it to One Corp as a nazir khas, as a nazir khas represented by the Majlis Agama Islam Johor Bahru. So that every time this create profit, is McDonald's, KFC, it goes to One Corp to develop the An-Nur Clinic and other social purposes. Is that correct, Prof?
Yes, I mean, if you look at that model, because in Malaysia you cannot create, the moment you use the word wakaf, it goes straight to the
Majlis Agama, right?
Majlis Agama. So that's why for some they would use the term foundation rather than wakaf.
Okay.
So like what Jacob did, even early on under the late arwah, the Hashim. So he took those shares and then created that wakaf. You know? And the return is used to help the poor, the clinics and so on. So that model is unique because it is in essence quite similar to the Turkish model.
Okay.
You create a wakaf, corporate wakaf. That corporate wakaf owns shares.
The corporate wakaf owns shares of other companies. Yeah.
And then from there, the returns are used for specific purposes. So it's not only Jacob that is doing that. We now have others as well. The Felda corporate wakaf.
Okay, Felda.
Yeah, Felda. Felda is the Federal Land Authority. So what they did is that Felda has many companies. Yeah. So those shares of those companies are created as a Felda wakaf.
Oh, all those shares they treated as wakaf.
They transfer.
They transfer into
not all.
Okay.
Okay.
Some of them.
Yes, some of it. So
wakaf,
they created Felda wakaf. So those own shares.
Okay.
And what they want to do is also, but again they have not resolved the issue, is that Felda is basically a scheme where people come and develop the land, agriculture purposes. So these people, some of them, do not have children anymore, and they are old, and they don't want to continue planting. For example, so they want to wakaf their land.
Okay. This is individual, right?
Individuals who are part of the scheme.
So the scheme they got it from the Felda.
Yeah, Felda give
financing.
Everyone land. Yeah. Felda give them land and financing to plant. Okay. For example, palm oil.
Yeah.
So they did it when they were young. Now they are old.
Yeah.
And they don't have children.
Right.
So rather than giving back, so they want to give as wakaf. As Muslim, you want to give, but still there are some legal issues that have not been resolved. So these are some of the examples now where wakaf is incorporated as shares.
So initially, Felda give land to the individual, which means that this individual will own fully the land, right?
Not fully owned in that sense, because this is a scheme that they have to follow through.
So it's not the full ownership?
Not the full ownership.
Okay.
Because the law says that the land belongs to Felda. But they have what you call in
manfaat.
Manfaat. Yes.
Yeah, only utilize the manfaat, the
beneficial rights.
Ownership.
Yeah, beneficial ownership, yes.
Okay. So they can use only the beneficial ownership, yeah. But when they don't have a children, when they grow old, then